Hey everybody, welcome back to Mrs. Hebert's favorite flute songs. Today I'm going to be sharing with you a story about a composer, remember that's someone who writes music for a living, that is probably the person who is responsible for everything that we do as musicians and as people who listen to music. That man's name is Johann Sebastian Bach. Now I'm going to be reading to you today from this book. It's called The Lives of the Musicians, Good Times, Bad Times, and What the Neighbors Thought. Juicy. So today, when we read about Mr. Bach, we're going to learn some very interesting things about him. Let me find him in the book. Excuse me for a second. Here he is. Now let's take a look at that. Take a look at how he's dressed and that really cool wig that he's wearing. He lived a long time ago. 20 children and 1,200 compositions. Johann Sebastian Bach. He was born in Germany in 1685. He died in Germany in 1750. And he is so important that we mark one of the major periods of music history with the time of his birth and death, the Baroque period. He was a German organist and great composer, best known for the Brandenburg Concertos, the Goldberg Variations, and the Well-Tempered Clavier. And also some really great flute music that you're going to hear later too. Oh, there's Betty. I was wondering if she was going to make there she is. I wonder if she was going to make another appearance today. She might show up in all of these videos. We never know. It's my kitty cat, Betty. She's so cute. As a young music teacher, Bach was out walking one night when 6 of his own students attacked him. They wanted an apology. Bach had called one of them a nanny goat bassoonist, someone who makes a bassoon sound like a goat. If you remember, the bassoon is the largest of the woodwind family. That was the one that was in the crocodiles in the pond. But Bach wouldn't take it back. He drew a knife in self-defense. Luckily, the fight was broken up before anyone was really hurt. All his life, Bach had trouble with people who didn't see things his way. He once wanted to quit a job, and his employer, a duke, wanted him to stay. Bach was so insistent that the duke threw him in jail. But here's the difference between Bach and the average stubborn person. During the month he spent in jail, Bach wrote 46 pieces of music. I haven't written 46 pieces of music in my entire life. Certainly not a month. I guess you don't have anything better to do when you're in jail, though. I don't know. Music that we still listen to 300 years later. Remember, he lived from 1685 to 1750. That was a long time ago. How could Johann Sebastian Bach ever have thought of becoming anything but a musician? His largest family tree is the largest one in all of music. Almost all his male relatives were musicians, some 76 in all, 53 of them named Johann. It's pretty cool. Now, just a little side note here, he probably had women relatives that were musicians too, but back when Bach lived, women were not really allowed or encouraged to be musicians. Thankfully, that has changed. Bach's mother read him Bible stories, and his father taught him violin, sometimes late into the evening. But both parents were dead by the time Bach turned 10, and he went to live with a brother. Bach was able to support himself before he was 15. He sang and took organ-playing jobs in towns near enough to walk to. Bach was always a dedicated musician, even if it meant blisters. Once he walked 200 miles just to hear the great organist Dietrich Buxtehude play. I would want to hear somebody named Dietrich play organ too. That's probably cool. Bach spent his whole life in one small part of Germany. He was married twice, first to his cousin, Maria Barbara, and after she died, to Anna Magdalena, who was a good singer and keyboard player. See, women were making music back then, just weren't allowed to. Anna Magdalena helped Bach in his work so much that her handwriting came to look just like his. Bach produced 1,200 musical works and had 20 children, though only 10 lived to adulthood. That was unfortunately common back in those days. 5 were named Johann, 2 Johanna, and 4 grew up to be famous composers themselves. I guess if you have 20 kids to name, it's hard to come up with 20 different names. In his free time at night, Bach would sit in his armchair, smoking his pipe, with a baby on his knee. His wife and his children would play and sing. Bach loved food and coffee, things that Bach and I have in common. Once he wrote a whole cantata about coffee. Among his most prized possessions were 2 silver coffee pots. They would have looked like that. Some fancy coffee pots. Bach was known as a dazzling organist. His strong legs pumped the pedals, his large hands performed acrobatics on the keyboard, and he'd even use a stick in his mouth to reach certain notes. I've never seen anyone do that. That must have been quite a sight, although you're kind of hidden when you're playing an organ. All you have to do is hit the right key at the right time, and the instrument plays itself. There's nothing remarkable about it. That's what he said of his playing. He wasn't a show-off. He just thought that, if you wanted to do it right, you just did it. Later in life, Bach went blind, probably from copying out his own music in poor light for many years. Remember, this is before we had light bulbs or LEDs. It was all by candlelight. He died of a stroke at age 65. Hardly any of his music was published while he was alive, nor did he expect it to be. Bach did not think he was writing music for posterity, which means for the rest of time. He was a professional. His music had an immediate purpose. Not until about 100 years after his death did the genius of Bach begin to be widely recognized. Now, Bach wrote the Goldberg variations to relax a millionaire. One of his pupils, Johann Goldberg, worked for an insomniac count who needed music to get to sleep. The count sent the most generous payment Bach had ever received. The famous 2-part inventions, which is another way of saying 2-part ideas, were written for Bach's children to exercise each finger and train their hands to play independently. The Brandenburg concertos were a sort of job application to a court official of Brandenburg. Bach didn't get the job, but his concertos are today among the best-known instrumental works of this entire period. Marianne Ziegler, a poet who had published 3 books, supplied the words for several of Bach's works. In working with her, Bach was ahead of his time. For women were allowed no public role in creating or performing music. Clearly, Bach knew that that was not the best way to treat women. So he kind of secretly employed Madame Ziegler. Pretty cool. The 2 Voyager spacecraft launched into the solar system in 1977, I was 2, contained 3 pieces by Bach, along with special record-playing equipment. Because back when Miss Hebert was 2 years old, a record player was the height of technology back then. We didn't even think of CDs until I was in high school, much less having your music on your phone all the time. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about Bach. And now we're going to hear some of Bach's music. The piece that I'm going to play for you on flute today is Bach's Partita in A minor. I'm only going to play the 4th movement of it. A movement is kind of like a track on a CD. When you go to a concert and you hear a multi-movement piece of music, you're not supposed to clap in between the movements, even though you might want to. It's a little confusing sometimes. But you guys know, applause is one of my 3 favorite things. So if you ever clapped for me, I would just be so happy anyway. So I'm going to play for you the Bourrée Anglaise. Now, Bourrée is a French dance. Anglaise means English. So this is an English version of a French dance written by a German composer around 1723, about 25 years or so before Bach passed away, almost 300 years ago. 300. that's even older than me. My goodness. It's like we're getting in a time machine and going back in time and listening to what people listened to 300 years ago. I hope you enjoy the Bourrée Anglaise from Bach's Partita in A minor. That was the Bourrée Anglaise from Bach's Partita in A minor. Now, I love this piece because it is incredibly dramatic, and you know, I kind of have a flair for the drama in my entire life. I hope you enjoyed this, and tomorrow we're going to learn about Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. See you guys later.